Yes, hello everyone, and welcome to the International Coaching Week offering from the ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter. We have been having events all week long, all across the world, including in India. All six chapters have put in their very best, and Mumbai is rounding it off with this very specially curated panel discussion this evening. Before I tell you about the panel and the panel discussion, we just like to observe a minute's silence for our dear departed friend and coach community member, Pradeep Natarajan, whose very tragic demise has left all of us shaken. So, may I just request everyone to observe a minute's silence for Pradeep in his memory, and uh, then we'll be back. Thank you very much for honoring that minute's silence. I welcome you to our panel discussion this evening. The entire topic and the panel has been very carefully curated by Nilima Lalsare, our learning director. Nilima, please wave and say hi so everyone can see you. We have a very wonderful panel of panel members whom we all reached out to because of their very deep expertise and experience on the topic at hand. And I've been part of 2 or 3 conversations so far leading up to this evening. And it actually felt like each of those conversations was a panel discussion by itself. So technically, this is the third panel discussion that we're actually having on this topic. And I can't wait to see how it actually turns out with everyone in the room. As always, please keep it interactive and keep posting your comments and questions in the chat box, and we'll definitely pick it up as we go along. I want to introduce you to the moderator who's heading our panel, and then hand it over to Nilima for a few announcements, and then we'll begin. So I do have the pleasure of introducing the person who's going to be our moderator for this evening, Maruk Bandorawala. Maruk, say hi. Okay, thanks. Maruk brings with her 28 years or more in human resources. She's been a coach for many years now with over 2,000 hours of coaching, a PCC credential, and well on her way into her MCC journey. Maruk is a master NLP practitioner. She's certified in transformational coaching and has many other credentials and certifications to her name. Massive body of work working across a diversified set of organizations across so many sectors: IT, manufacturing, FMCG, banking, insurance, and more. And lots of pro bono coaching with very strong institutions like the UN organizations, the Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai, IIMs, IITs, and many other educational institutions. For those of us who know and love Maruk, there's so much more to her than just her credentials. And, we couldn't think of anyone else better than her to moderate this panel. And our panel is also pretty awesome, and Maruk's going to tell you more about that. But first, Nilima has some announcements. Nilima, over to you.
Thank you. So I don't think it's an announcement per se. And I think with doing so many attending so many webinars, being part of so many webinars, we all know what are the basics that we follow. So I guess you all are on mute, so I don't have to say anything on that line. But from the point of asking questions or sharing your points, we would appreciate if you could put it on the chat box so that we don't disturb the flow of conversation, and we will pick up all those pointers and questions that you've put in during the Q&A session so that and try answering all the questions as much as possible. So that's about it from my end. So Maruk, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tushima. Thank you, Nilima. So today's topic, navigating the future from reaction to reflection in leadership. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, coaches, HR leaders, and I think everyone who's here is probably someone who's passionate about tapping into their own or others' potential, right? And going inwards always requires a pause, something around reflection. So last week, the Mint reported that India tops the workplace burnout survey with 59% reporting symptoms of burnout. This is a worldwide survey. And in a world where change is the only constant, leaders and their teams are frequently, finding themselves reacting instinctively because that's just what's expected of them, because speed is so important. And reflecting later, very often they ask themselves, could they have taken a different approach? Of course, hindsight is always 20/20 vision, but practicing the pause versus being agile, speed versus being mindful, balancing employee well-being and mental health versus stringent deadlines. It's a very hard time to be a leader. And today we're going to explore this entire space. Do we have all the answers? Of course not. Will we give you some food for thought at the end of it? I certainly hope so. So let me start by introducing our panel for this evening. And our panel is an interesting mix of people who are coaches, people who are industry leaders, people who have been both, people who are currently both, right? So everybody has at some stage or the other sat on the other side of the table. So let me start by introducing Kirtana Fernandez. Kirtana is a seasoned business partner and COE leader with over 20 years of experience. She excels in leadership hiring, talent management, driving transformation programs. Kirtana is passionate about inclusion, culture transformation, and building high-performing teams. She is currently the HR transformation programs lead at Wipro. Welcome, Kirtana. Next, we have Suchitra Bhaskar. Suchitra sees herself as an enabler of change, furthering the potential in organizations and individuals. Her passion is thus centered around people, be it one-on-one coaching, transformational change, co-creating inclusive cultures, enabling leadership transitions. Her years of study of psychology, group dynamics, and TA frameworks, and her own self-work has supported her on this journey. Suchitra has her own coaching and consulting practice, and she also heads learning and OD at Intas Pharmaceuticals. Then we have Anirudh Gupta. So I have very strategically placed him between the ladies. So Anirudh has worked primarily in the area of L&D, OD, and HR across industries, including BFSI, pharmaceuticals, and consulting. He has worked actively on selection systems, performance management, competency frameworks, career and succession planning. Over the years, he strived to build systems that match the dynamics of business. And like many of us here today, has been on both sides of the table. He's a passionate learner and says that it's a matter of personal pride when peers and colleagues see him as an expert in the field. He's currently the India lead at the Pfizer Learning Academy. And then we have Neha Gupta, who's a CXO coach and again an experienced OD practitioner. She integrates insights from psychologists like Jung and Byrne with 22 years of diverse experience. Certified in methodologies like appreciative inquiry, she fosters transformative growth with experiential learning and behavioral tools. Her interventions focus on leadership, self-actualization, the whole person, using various creative mediums like storytelling and nature to drive meaningful change aligned with values. So thank you all for being here today. And like Dushima said, we've had a lot of fun having conversations to the build-up. So today too, let's all have fun. Dushima, is there any way we can see the entire panel on the screen?
Yeah,
Can you spotlight all five of us so that?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So I want to start with the organizational leaders in that sense. So Anirudh and Kirtana. To start off, can we start by really defining what do we really mean by reflection versus reaction in the context of organizational leadership? Who is a good leader today? So either of you could take that.
So I'll go first, Anirudh.
Sure, please.
So in my mind, and from my observation over the years of seeing many leaders who've been successful in the short term and long term, Maruk, I would say leaders who have made decisive actions, taken decisive actions based on reflection, but they are the ones who have understood that speed is required. They need to act fast, but they've done so on the basis of data. They've done so on the basis of learning from others, understanding various viewpoints, but they have not sat on that data. There's not been a moment of a paralysis with analysis, right? They've taken decisive action. So I would say they have gone after making long-term changes, but at the same time, seen that they have people who are around them, understand what it takes to make those actions, right? Why are they taking those actions? So they have circled back with the data with those individuals, making them understand that they have reflected on what they have and not come off as leaders who are making taking knee-jerk actions or decisions even.
So just to add my perspective, thank you, Kirtina, for sharing that lovely point. Couple of years back, I read a report from Mercer, which said that the foremost quality that needs to be there in leadership today is going to be empathy. Empathy to business, empathy to customers, empathy to your stakeholders, to your team members and employees that work for you. And I think over the years, the virtue of empathy has only become more stronger in the industry. So for me, a successful leader is somebody who is able to empathize. And to add on to that, is able to empathize with self. Because before I can start reflection, I have to start empathizing myself. I can't be a leader where I have to justify my action because justification is right. Because it's a game of right and wrong. It's a competition. And, the world is competitive. The share markets are competitive. India is having general elections, which is very competitive. So the whole nature of environment has this very strong undertone of competition. And successful leaders that I have seen, those who have loved to work with, those I would like to follow even tomorrow, are the ones who had a very strong purpose, were empathetic towards all the people that were engaged with them in making that purpose a reality. So that's what I would say is, according to me, is what my experience tells me is a perspective on successful leadership today.
Neha, Suchitra, would either of you like to add anything to what Anirudh or Kirtina have said? Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Maruk. Anirudh, I love what you spoke about empathy. And I think what I've really been noticing is that organizations putting a lot of emphasis on that in the past couple of years, really coaching leaders to understand right from scratch what empathy means as against what it's, loosely understood to be. The additional point I'd like to make is that leadership seems to be a lot about holding paradoxes right now and polarities. Over and over again in my work of engaging with leaders, I think that's really what I'm seeing. In fact, Maruk, you spoke about agility versus being centered or reflective, another polarity. So I think a successful leader today is somebody who can accept that polarities exist, who can go beyond linear thinking and hold those polarities. I think that's increasingly becoming a hallmark of great leadership. Just wanted to add that. Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic point, because the fact is that all of us grapple with polarities, leaders more so. My question is, while we talked about empathetic leadership, we talked about empathy being the most important characteristic, yet there seems to be some kind of tipping point that organizations seem to be heading to. there is this whole quiet quitting. In fact, there's not so quiet quitting anymore with the band baja barat kind of quitting that's also happening, as if that's not a sign of empathetic leadership. So what is the reality today? While you may rationally say that, yes, empathetic leadership is what we need, and that's what's, but is that really happening? Because at the end of the day, shareholder value seems to trump everything, and leaders are being questioned quarter to quarter by their boards. So in this context, is it possible to hold it together? And if it's an either or, then how do we find that balance? Suchitra, would you like to try this one? Would you like to take this one?
Yeah. In fact, I was just actually ruminating about the point Anirudh made, and the beautiful point that Neha added on to with the polarities as well. So the interesting thing is, and I think both of them are right. So is it an either or are we talking about this in a way where we are saying we need to select one and one is better than the other? The first time when I came in contact with you guys, when you said about reflective leadership, I just Googled what it is so that I can understand it better. Interestingly, the thing that it throws up is to say self-improvement in order to grow, adapt, and stay agile. And there you go. Okay, so we are talking about reflection. We are talking about agility. We are talking about constant improvement and change. So the question is whether it is an either or at all, or is it about managing a balance between the two? And and I think there is no right answer to it. And like you said, that this conversation here is more to share our different perspectives. And I would just want to say that it is my perspective, maybe right or wrong, but this is what I would like to put forward. So when we are talking about this whole agility, the need to stay, relevant in a fast-paced world, there are so many factors that come into play. One, obviously, all of us as coaches know is individual personality, and all of them are different. So the way one personality reacts versus the other could be totally different. The other aspect which contributes to it is this whole busyness trap that we are getting into. Okay, call it technology. So there is a need for action that a person has to be demonstrating. And interestingly, this busyness is also somewhere accentuated by the business or the corporate or the industry that we are a part of. So if I, for example, if I were to just give a small illustration, if I'm a part of a startup, the need for being agile, to be competitive, like Anirudh mentioned, and being, fast-paced, rapid, not have any time to reflect because I need to outsmart and outthink the market has become a norm. Versus another, which is like a matured organization, plateaued processes are all set. It could give you a far more advantage of being able to fall back onto them. And the third part, which is something that we cannot really ignore, is our role of the leader as a member of a family, as an ecosystem. Again, we are talking about younger leaders. They could be young parents. They could be people who have children who have growing demands. Now, the interesting thing of the threshold that you were talking about a little while earlier, Maru, comes in when all of this is a vicious cycle weaving one into the other and impacts the same person that we are talking about. So somewhere it is very difficult to paint this with a same brush to say one organization, different leaders. It is very, very customized to my reality, depending on my individual personality, my business cycle, my family circumstance, and so on and so forth. And hence, that's perhaps where, the role of the coach, etc., also comes in handy. So that's one part I would say. The other is how the individual then also deals with this. I have seen leaders who say, I go for a marathon, I run 10 kilometers in the morning, and I get my silence, I get my reflection. So are we really talking about reflective by sitting? And another person would say, I sit in meditative state for 10 minutes and I get my answers. So interestingly, it is it's about the individual's own way to find that balance, find what works for him or her, and see what is the threshold level of pressure and stress and agility versus reflective leadership I'm able to demonstrate. So I'll leave it at that. So it's a very nuanced answer, but I think that is the only way I look at it.
Suchitra, I love what you said, that it's very unique to the individual and it's very unique to that leader. My question, and Neha, maybe this is something you could pick up. Are leaders recognizing that need? As it is so individual specific, and as a coach, as the CXO coach, what is your sense today? What are the trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, so interesting question, Maruk. It should seem obvious that the need is apparent, but it's not. Many times when leaders come for coaching, they're coming with the symptoms or the outcomes of the need. And that's what they talk more about rather than being really able to say that, hey, I'm burnt out, I'm stressed out, I'm reacting. It's more talking about behavior that, you know what, I went for that meeting and I got triggered and I said things I shouldn't have said. And then I had a terrible time managing the consequences of that. Or that I'm sitting working 18 hours every day and I really don't know what to do. It was my anniversary and I couldn't make it back home for the evening. So all kinds of, like Suchitra, you said, it's the system, it's the whole system. One thing spills into the other. So what I'm increasingly finding is that at some unconscious level, people get it, leaders get it, that there's a red flag, there's an alarm bell going, something needs to happen, but that it is burnout, that it can move towards a more responsive or reflective space rather than reactive is not something they're often able to articulate. So I feel like it becomes a coach's role there to sit with the leader, understand their reality, where they're coming from, keeping it very neutral, creating that safe space to help them arrive at this conclusion themselves, perhaps with gentle nudges and take it forward from there. But am I seeing a lot of this happening? Absolutely. Absolutely. Am I also seeing organizations becoming more conscious and supportive of leaders on this journey? Again, a resounding yes. So that's really my experience with how apparent it's becoming.
So again, Neha, very interesting dichotomy that you've raised, that people are getting burnt out, leaders realize that something needs to change.
Yeah.
Organizations are also cognizant of it. Yet there seems to be something that seems to be coming in the way of creating reflective organizations, truly reflective at the core. You recognize it and find it, fix it in bits and pockets. Anirudh and Kirtana, this is for you. What is it that comes in the way from a culture perspective, from psychological perspective? What are the hurdles in an organization that prevent it? Like Neha said, it's a systemic issue. It's not just an individual issue. What is it that is coming in the way of organizations taking cognizance of it and saying, okay, we need to somewhere take stock and shift?
Yeah, I think, Maruk, organizations are making a deliberate attempt, right? And it's not an, I would actually say it's more than an attempt, and it's pretty structured. So you would see it in the way the culture is shifting, what is the leadership mindset that they're demanding in the organization? What is the tone that they're setting for the leaders? And what everyone should expect of leaders. And I don't mean, when I say leaders, I just don't mean the top one layer or the top two layers, right? I mean leaders even far below, and maybe even in the middle level. So it is a deliberate exercise that organizations are taking on. And sometimes I think past experiences of the organization. It takes a little longer for them to have that faith that yes, this is the right way to go, and you need to keep pushing in this direction. And when I say past experiences, could be failures of where they thought that we could go in this direction and allow for room for this kind of a style to manifest, but they did not see it successful, or they felt that we needed to be quicker, we needed to be faster in a particular area, and they felt that maybe that is what we need to resort back to. But I have also seen organizations stay at it, keep the long-term view in the picture. Of course, I don't think there would be any organization that does not look at a quarter-to-quarter result. That is their bread and butter. But keeping a deliberate view at the long term as to what is the kind of leadership you're really building, what are we really going to be known for as an organization? I think that is a very deliberate switch that I see in organizations today, and that really comes from how they're investing in the culture transformation within the organization. What is the leadership mindset that they are really demanding within the organization, or even building in the organization?
Kirtana, may I just ask you a slight follow-up question on that? Would you like to share, you said, organizations are very consciously and deliberately creating systems and structures and processes around this. Would you like to share what Wipro is doing in this space?
Yes. So actually, Wipro embarked on this journey almost more than 4 years back, Maruk. And it has been, like I said, not just a culture transformation where Mr. Rishad Premji himself delivers, what it means to be a leader who believes in this culture, lives these 5 habits that we have built within the organization. It is basically demonstrating how we live our values in action. But it is also entrenched in the processes, the way the employees experience different aspects of the organization, right? So that's why I said it's a very deliberate and a very structured effort. It is not just lip service. You would see it in the way we communicate within the organization, the way we lead some of the people processes within the organization, and the way performance is seen largely in the organization. So that's just some of the ways we have made this change happen.
Thank you, Kirtana. Anirudh, would you like to respond from the perspective of your organization?
So thank you, Maruk, and interesting response, Kirtana. Completely agree with you. One perspective that I wanted to ask, a while back you had asked, Maruk, that what is the psychological, the cultural elements that are promoting reflection within an organization? So organizations are aware, and I think if I suppose to talk about Pfizer, the company that I work for, very acutely aware that this reflection process has to be a part of its culture. A lot of effort is taken to ensure that leaders get that space and get that psychological safety where they are able to reflect. So is that opportunity provided? Yes. Is it provided systemically? Yes. Is it a part of the culture? Now that becomes a bit of a tough question to answer, because the behavior may not be commensurate with that demand. So let me share something. When in the entire industry, there are going to be buzzwords and news around layoffs, and there are going to be job security issues. So I'm reflecting. I need to take some action. But can I? Would I be able to? Because there is some pressure there. So balancing that business pressure and the time that I might need to act on what I've reflected may not always fall in a very favorable formula. And that is where leaders probably need to be a little, okay, let me say, the coaching should help, or coaching does help our leaders to become far more confident in their approach. So one thing what organizations are doing, like ours definitely does, is helping leaders get that confidence that, okay, reflect, take action, don't get sidelined because of that psychological or that kind of psychosis that you might drive yourself through because the industry is this, we need to happen. So providing that psychological safety becomes a very important element. So if that goes and it becomes a part of the culture, then it really pays out very, very good dividends. So within Pfizer, we really have a very strong program around psychological safety. Being a healthcare company, we really acknowledge wellness, both physical and mental. And there is adequate and many forums where there could be this conversations. Coaching is one of them. We have internal coaches where leaders are able to at least bounce through their ideas. They can reflect. They're able to present their points that they might want to act out, and then feel confident, get that confidence that yes, there is a whole system which is able to support them. I don't know whether my long answer has been able to give some perspective, but I hope so it did.
Yeah, Suchitra, you'd like to add something?
Yeah. So, thank you. So both of these questions that you asked, one I think has been, what is it that the organizations are doing? And the two organizations that I'm associated with. And one of them actually had redrafted their values and they introduced something called care. So while it was getting done, the HR head messaged me and said, Suchitra, I'm adding this. So, and coming from the BFSI, I knew that 1 or 2 years, once the CEO has entrenched himself, they have a new CEO and a CHRO, and the company's name is Crompton, for example, okay? I don't mind sharing it, and they'll be very proud that I've spoken about them. So I said, how are you defining it is very critical. Otherwise, 2 years later, all your HR interventions will be questioned on what is the ROI it is getting. Okay, so they've launched a series of things, including that over a period of time, we may want to relook at the bell curve so that people do not feel boxed into it. We will look at the way employee policies are being written. We are also going to introduce coaching, C's for care, C's for coaching, and C's for empathetic leadership. And that is going to be a part of the 360 that we bring in when later on, when we ask people if they are feeling psychological safety in dealing with you as a leader, it'll also dovetail by saying, has my leader coached me? Has my voice been heard in the organization? So what comes in the way is initially bells and whistles, things are rolled out. But after the point in time when the rubber hits the road, they will ask you, how has it translated to reduction in attrition? How has it improved the shareholder value? And that's where I think we need as HR. And when I say HR, I mean, the V is more for that. We have to be mindful that some of these, little things have also to be tied in very tightly so that we stand and say that this is what is being done and it is paying off as well. So that's my little take.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. It's really interesting to hear the formal, structured approaches that organizations are taking, and they're invaluable. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the unsaid. One is the formal approach, the other is what's really playing out informally. So I also feel like if the leader in herself or himself is extremely self-aware and has taken on this journey of moving from reactive to reflective leadership themselves, if they have traveled that path, I think it has an immense influence on the culture of the organization. For example, what are we rewarding in the organization? So is the message constantly to be an overachiever, to be extremely strong, to have all the answers at all points in time? Is that what we're really unconsciously, informally promoting? Then, that's really the message we're sending across in the organization. But are we, with our own actions, working on our own selves as a leader and therefore supporting the second in line, third in line to do the same and travel the same distance? I read something somewhere that for wellness, for example, if a gym is put in an organization, not TT tables or spots, yet we are piling up folks with so much work that they don't have time and space to use those. But here, very silently, the onus is then put on the employee saying that, hey, we've given you all this. Why aren't you using it? So the lived action has to match the structure somewhere. So if I'm putting the gym, am I also cognizant of the fact that you may not be available for that 7:30 p.m. call because that's your 1 hour at the gym? Am I supporting you there? Or if you come back and say, hey, I'm nervous, am I going to tell you, jump in? That's what we do in this organization. Or am I going to be empathetic, listen, create that psychological safety in the moment, allow that leader to also be human? So, the only point I'm trying to make is that all the formal structures will find a lot of vitality if the leaders are also living it and giving that message informally on a day-to-day basis in the organization. So that's my take on this, whole structural piece around it.
Anirudh and Kirtana, do you have any response to this? Because I was curious, Anirudh, when you talked about psychological safety, exactly what Neha said. While the systems and structures are there, how do you really know that a person genuinely feels safe enough to say, okay, I need a break today. I just need you know, I'm going to the gym for an hour, and I'm not coming for that meeting. Is there freedom to do that?
So I would say yes. All freedom comes with responsibility also, right? So the point which Suchitra made a while back, there's a lot of individual personality that plays out in this case. So somebody who believes that it's lonely on the top will be lonely at the top. Somebody who believes that I'm at the top and not because I'm alone, but because I've got so many people along with me who support me to be on the top, the entire response would change. So how are you interpreting your environment is extremely important for that leader. And I really, to what Neha said, it was a beautiful point, loved it. The gym is there, but then if I'm saying, oh, gym is there, but I can't take out the time because I've got lots of work to do. So reflect on that. How can you make time? Maybe you're not wanting to delegate certain tasks, which you could probably delegate. One is not aware. So this becomes a very, it's like, I give you an analogy, traffic jams. It's, like having a mental traffic jam. Mumbai, those of you stay, tons of traffic jam. The jam is going to be there. It's not going to go away any day, anytime soon. I doubt it. And if you're choosing to drive, then you will be stuck in a jam. Now, it's your choice whether you want to critique it, you want to be unhappy with it, or listen to some music, make some calls, listen to a comedy show, treat it as me time. Your choice. Now, organization is providing you with that platform. How do you use it? I think that's the individuality that we need to acknowledge and appreciate. And that's what we do at Pfizer. We ensure that the opportunity is there. Now, how do I use it as a leader is up to me. And if a leader is going under a coaching program and that kind of reflection can be created that, hey, there's so much opportunity here which I'm not using it. I think that realization itself does wonders.
I just wanted to add a point to that, Maruk, and at least at Wipro, we have been using the 360-degree survey model to be a little more self-aware. And this has helped leaders to get a whole lot of feedback from all their stakeholders, be able to take time out, reflect on how they have done things, right? And this is not about what I have achieved in the year. It is about how I have done it, right? What did I really do it the right way? And it is a real reflection time. We've been doing this survey for the past, I think now 30 years, and it has served us well because I would say this is one of the deliberate, structured things that has been put into motion. And I think the how part of it, while I've been saying that, performance is important, your quarter to quarter performance would always be measured. The how is equally important. And this once a year kind of a survey which is done, which just it's a report that you get, you go by, you read it, you understand, you absorb, and you say what you want to do with it. You want to move forward. And I think those who choose to be reflective leaders take those actions, seek out those kind of tools and processes that are available in the organization, and do something with it, right? Whereas you still would have a whole lot of people who would get this report, but would decide that maybe I just don't have the time, so I'm not going to do anything with it. Just wanted to put that out.
That's really beautiful, because you're saying for 30 years you're actually doing this practice, and I'm assuming when you've done something for 30 years, the impact on the culture is huge. A question that's coming to my mind, you said it's left up to the manager to decide, the leader to decide what he wants to do with this report. The ones who do choose to work on it, to become more reflective, to really embrace what this organization is allowing you in terms of a reflective space, what is different for them, whether it's from a growth perspective, whether it's from, how are things, how do they shine in this system? Do they shine? Or is it okay, you chose to work and you're a different kind of leader, he chose not to, and you still have the same opportunities? What is that? How does it play out over a long period of time?
So at least at Wipro, I've seen that these are the leaders that people want to work with, and in the long, because these are the people you see constantly changing, evolving as better leaders, and it shows, in the team can see it. And it's not just the people who've been around for a long time, but it is also the people who just walk into the organization. They see that this person has really invested in himself or herself, and because that leader does that, and they know that there is value in being with that leader, because that leader would be willing to make that investment in me. And that's so true, because most of these leaders who take time out to invest in themselves, they ensure that they invest in their teams. And you would see the best teams working for these kind of leaders.
Can I ask a provocative question? Do they grow faster? Do they get promoted faster?
I think that does come around, eventually, Maruk, but I don't think they do it with that goal in mind. But yes, I feel that the kind of roles they end up taking, because they challenge themselves so much, they end up taking roles which are that much more challenging. And of course, all that, flows into also getting promoted maybe faster.
Okay, so that study has not happened in terms of this is a thing that can make you grow.
Yeah.
So that direct correlation has not happened. Fair. Thank you so much.
Jumping in, I couldn't restrain myself from.
Go ahead, Anirudh. Now we're having fun.
See, so when we are defining growth, we'll have to define what growth might mean to different individuals and to leaders. So just having this view that the growth is vertical, growth is designation, growth is maybe more ESOPs or lots of money in the bank, probably might not be a definition for somebody. So when this, activities such as as 360 or even coaching, I think creates a lot of self-awareness. The impact that I have seen in my practice and even in the organization is it has done far more wonders than a psychometric has done. So in 3 months, people who were really earlier not able to understand a psychometric report, irrespective of from where it came, were really, okay, now I understand myself better. So once they become self-aware, I think the growth will automatically happen. Now, in which direction? Who am I to define that? That person defines. Until the time that person is satisfied, sees that there is value in that person's existence and being and what that person is doing, I think the goal is met with. And I think that's the growth philosophy, which really matters, which really tends to create a differentiation at the workplace.
Well said, Anirudh. I completely concur. So this is an interesting question from Kushima, and she's asking, what is it that leaders expect from coaches and coaching to strengthen reflection rather than reaction? And anybody can take that. Yes, Suchitra, go ahead.
Yeah, I like to just take a shot at this. I can't hold back so there is a TA theory out here that I'd like to bring up, where we say that we are human beings. and not human doings. Somewhere along the way, we dropped the being and we started defining ourselves with what we have done and what we have accomplished and what we have done. So what happens is this leads to the busyness trap that I spoke about a bit earlier. And I think all of us are also alluding to it. And to Anirudh's point and Kirtana's point, I think organizations are well-meaning and putting in a lot of efforts to ensure people, whether even giving them feedback. A 360 feedback is also a reflective exercise for someone to sit, smell the coffee, right? Now, the beauty is my busyness trap, and I'm going to, use myself as an analogy. 10 years ago, when I got, before I went back to my psychology and my TA studies, my professor asked me if I can go and do a 10-day Vipassana. I said, I can't even sit for 10 minutes with myself. And what are you saying, 10 days? And I see a lot of people getting into something like that. And this is where the role of coaching comes into. So I think it is uncomfortable for a lot of people to figure out how. What do I need to do? What does it mean to be a reflective leader? We talk about empathy. It is somewhere also colored as soft. Reflective is also colored as slow. Is it colored as being not reactive? Will it mean? So we talk about a lot of these words like being mindful, etc. Somewhere it has been associated that this is something I do after I'm retired from work, not while I'm at work. While I'm at work, I'm at the treadmill. I have to do 4 things. I have to be a multitasker. And I think that's where a coach's role comes in as very handy. Because the coach asks these questions and the scare or the unsettling feeling that the person has sitting with that question of those deep questions of where are you headed? What does success mean to you? Like Anirudh said, those kind of questions which are so unsettling and unnerving. The coach says, I'll hold your hand or, the space, and let's figure this out together. And that's the gift that the coaching as a process gives to the coaching. So that's one part. And also clarifying for the leader what reflection could lead to. It does not need to mean slowing down. It does not mean to me, being soft. Empathy does not mean X, Y, Z. It means faster decision making as well. So that's one part. The other part of it as coaches and being the organizational person, we have access to both the leaders as well as the human resources team. And if we have the privilege of coaching more than one leader in an organization, we have the trend to observe to see, is there a particular pattern that we are observing? Systemically, is there something that needs to be flagged to the organization that this could be something you need to look into? And I think as coaches, that's another role, another power that we hold to be able to influence that change. And thankfully, it can be done in a very safe way without compromising on confidentiality. At the same point in time, we hold the access and the power and the responsibility as well. So these are the 3 pieces that I would like to just leave.
Yeah, I'd like to build on what you said, Suchitra. And, I really resonate with the fact that organizations are well-meaning. I think organizations are also somewhere figuring out, this whole journey. They don't have all the answers. It's not all sorted. It's the journey and the intent is there, which is why so many coaching spaces get created. And I feel extremely grateful for that because that's really our chance to influence the system. And leader by leader, every person who begins to learn containment, every leader who begins to make peace with their navratas or the 9 emotions and regulate them is offering that gift to all the people around them. And, also probably taking it back outside of work. Every time I've had an opportunity to work with a leader on this whole regulation piece or becoming more reflective than reactive, invariably what I've heard is that this has helped me not just professionally in my leadership journey, but as a whole person back home. as a human being. And I'm reminded of a very beautiful quote by Carl Jung here, where he says that learn all the structures, learn all the theories and techniques, but when you're with another human soul, be just another human soul. Somewhere we forget that you're not productivity machines. There is this whole humanness aspect which is very alive. Now, if I'm facing something back at home and I come to work, I can't just cut off that part of me and, switch it off, become somebody else, become this super efficient machine. Is there space for me to be whole in the system? Is all of me welcome? Or at least can I make that effort to show up as a human being with a range of emotions? And that doesn't mean, and I just read in the comments that empathy has become a misunderstood word, and I'm just going to speak on that as well, because empathy is the real space of passion for me. I've been working with a lot of organizations over years of journey to make empathetic leaders. Organizations are taking 2-year long journeys just to build empathy in culture and in their leaders. So kudos to those organizations as well. But when I cut off pieces of myself, I'm also cutting off so much of my creativity. I'm cutting off so much of my softness, of my ability to build connect, of my ability to empathize. So it cannot just go the way I want. I want to be an empathetic leader, but I don't want to deal with uncomfortable emotions. It doesn't work like that. It's a package. I need to be able to recognize a range of emotions in myself, whatever the source. Is it coming from the org? Is it coming from outside? Can I contain them? Can I learn to regulate them? Can I find that calmness within me? And it's only when I find that can I bring my whole being, the best of me, to work. And when I do more of that, that's also something I can offer to my team. I can offer to the organization. And that's where I feel like coaching plays such an incredible part. Such an incredible part. Because metaphorically, it seems to me when I sit with a coachee, it's almost like going under the Bodhi tree. That's the metaphor that always comes alive for me. It's like you're sitting, creating this container, you're sitting in this space where both of you are just sitting across each other, two human beings. And it's almost like a sacred space of reflection, of insight. And if you do it often enough and long enough, changes happen in the leader, in the coachee. And as changes happen, they ripple across the organization. So I feel like coaching can really, really help one step at a time, creating one reflective leader at a time. I know a little bit of a long answer, but I couldn't contain my passion in answering this one. So.
I think that was beautiful, Neha. And somebody has mentioned in the chat that this is getting very deep. The question that's coming to me is, it sounds fabulous, but it's not happening, right? Sarita very interestingly has put a comment saying, I can show up as a leader with a range of emotions, but that doesn't land well with my colleagues. And when you said, is the whole person welcome? And as a leader, do I see the whole person? Do I have the time to see the whole person? Do I even want to see the whole person? So, Chitra, you had shared a beautiful example of one of your coaches. And really, in one of our conversations, I'd really like you to share that example, because that is the reality of organizations today. So how can we shift that? Although we've been talking about it, but I'd really like you to share that example that you shared.
I forgot what I shared because
about your
the
coachee about the
oh yes, oh yeah, okay. I thought that was supposed to be off camera. Okay.
Oh,
so it's okay since we spoke about it. But this is going to allude to the point that I made about our responsibility as coaches to also see, is there a pattern or a trend? Do I see my responsibility going beyond my coachee to ensure their safety? Okay, when we sense that the organization may not be spending that time or the effort of understanding what is happening with different people, sometimes the coach has access to it. So what I was sharing with Maruk was a particular coachee who was rated really high and had been put up as a high potential for a coaching program. And while I was talking to the individual, I just noticed something funny. It wasn't funny, actually, something off. And as we were talking, he was mentioning about issues with his special child, and there were a lot of things. So I just generally asked him, how is your typical day like? And these are general things that we do to try and understand how is it the organization is growing at a rapid pace. You have a small child which requires special needs, and you've been rated like a super performer. So something struck, and I think there was a parallel process between the two of us. And I said, what is going on? How are you taking care of yourself?
Hi, can we request everyone else to be on mute? Except the panel, of course.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, and that's when the person's eyes welled up. And it was a he, and he said, how did you figure out that I am under stress? So I said, I don't know, instinctively, I just felt it. There is a lot you're trying to please. So do you make time for yourself? And where is that self-care showing up? And that's when he said that I'm dealing with it and it is showing up and I'm losing my eyebrows and my facial hair. And I didn't know how to respond. Even now, when I talk about it, I have those bumps. So how do we respond? I was sitting with the issue. Telling the person to be assertive, to go push back and say that this is it, I would not work beyond 6 is not going to solve the problem. Telling him to reflect and say, meditate, handle your stress better, you need to prioritize, is not going to solve that for him. So is there something else? I couldn't sleep that night. And I said, what is it that we both can do? There are certain things. And I then went ahead and I was coaching a couple of other people in the same organization. And I saw that many people did talk about the fast pace. And like I said, personality does have a role to play. This is a person who is unable, bottles up, okay? Is also personal crisis of a special child. There's a lot of guilt factor that he's going through. So I think that's where our duty as coaches comes in. And I went in and I figured out a way to create that space between the HR person to say that, can you have a conversation one-on-one with all the coaches that you have? And one of the questions that you asked is, how burnt out do you feel? Would you include that as a part of your whatever employee engagement survey to say, do I have a psychological space where I can say no and I have a choice and I would not be, penalized for it? And how many days of leave are people taking versus I saw somebody asking that question on culture. In India, you have a lot of people saying that I have not been able to exhaust the mandatory leave that I'm supposed to take. And they feel proud about it for some time till they realize it's eating up on them. They don't know how to switch off. So we worked on some of these, and he asked me, is there a problem you're sensing, Suchitra? And I said, no, I just want you to do this without asking questions. So I think it becomes our responsibility as coaches to say that we are seeing a person, but that person is also a microcosm perspective of the system. So, you can't change the person alone. The system will take care of it and put it all back. And I know, there are enough people like Neha and Anirudh and Kirtana and Maruk yourself to say that that is system dynamics. So how do we create that safety and that space so that we are able to do a both here? And it is not a choice of either or. I can't say my work only deals with you and I go back after that 1 hour or 90-minute conversation is over. You deal with the system. Somewhere I feel that we have to lend ourselves beyond it.
Thank you, Suchitra. So a question that's for all of you. What are the reflective practices? Coaching is one, but coaching again is given to a very small group of people in any organization. So what are the reflective practices that can be incorporated into an organization's daily functioning, such that they can start building a reflective culture more consciously? There will always be pressures, right? But within that, what can they start doing for it to really seep into the ground? Any thoughts? Anybody can take this.
So, Maruk, let me attempt this. Because I'm just thinking what all practices would actually qualify for this. So, besides coaching, I think providing, or rather, leaders making time to have interpersonal alignment calls. What we call as interpersonal alignment is that I am able to have a conversation with you. So many times at senior levels, you would have that there are issues that are between two functions. And those two leaders are probably not talking it, and it's becoming very, it's going through a lot of emails or lots of process. So having that kind of thing really creates that conversation, that creates a space for reflection. Second element is that creating conversations okay, within teams. So when leaders are privy to how teams are having conversations, it gives them some sort of comfort level and ideas, and then say, okay, this is what I can do. It provides one very important thing for reflection is data. So in the absence of data, how do I reflect? Then how do I distinguish imagination versus data? So reflection would require for me to have some data about myself. My self-awareness is nothing but giving me some data. 360 is nothing but giving me data. Any organizational culture is giving me data. The question that a coach asks me compels me to think and find fishes. I have to fish that data out of my own life experiences. So that's some of the things that we do. So coaching is there. We do cultural surveys. We do 360s. We do lots of psychometrics depending upon person, place. We do transition coaching. So a lot of opportunity is there in the system per se for leaders to reflect. But the tough part is what Neha said and what Suchitra said a while is doing it, right? Using the gym that is there. So that's where the probably, if further work needs to be done in that space. How do we create that mandatory leave? How do we ensure it gets taken? And the pride around not taking it gets reduces, and pride around taking it becomes more valuable. I pause there. Pass the baton back to the panel.
Thank you. Go ahead, Neha.
Thanks for sharing that, Anirudh. And I'm going to take a little different direction to answer this question. Go very micro here. Really, really micro. I also read somewhere that what are some practices when we're going from meeting to meeting, So I feel like coaching gives folks a lot of space for reflection then and there through the insightful questions or feed forward and all of that. But I also feel like some of the very simple tools, so simple that sometimes it's hard to put across how important they are, like breath work. And explaining how different patterns of breathing, doing a little breath work at different times of the day, using technology mindfully. For example, there are so many apps which help you with meditations, little meditations like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or affirmations or relaxation music, or how do you want to build one mindfulness practice during the day? So I tell my leaders that if you like your cup of tea and you're going to create those 10 minutes in the day, where you're just going to engage with your cup of tea and have it probably looking out of the window and just having tea in that moment. That's your reflective space. So it needn't get so very complex, so what I help leaders recognize is where can they create little opportunities during their day where they can inculcate some of their mindfulness practices. It could be post lunch, 2-minute deep breathing. It could be this cup of tea. It could be listening to certain, people have different belief systems, whatever works for them while they're coming back and forth from work. It could be any of these practices, which really helps to create that pause. So mindfulness sometimes becomes a very big word, but if you go down to the crux of it, it can be very, very simple things that you do. Gratitude is a great way to fill in your emotional bank balance. One quick exercise that I always have everybody do is, can you in this moment think of 3 things in your life that you're deeply grateful for? It works like magic, really. Because suddenly, and this is also again a little bit of appreciative inquiry where you're taking your mind off what's pulling you down and getting into something which is energizing you, and it already exists. You just have to focus on it a little bit consciously. So I think some of these micro practices really I have seen superb results. So which is what I was saying, that it can seem simple, but sometimes the answers to great complexity lies in great simplicity. I think this is one of those things. And for meetings, sometimes I suggest leaders that they schedule 10-minute pauses in like actively in their calendars. Like just block 10 minutes off for themselves once a day. Can't be that hard. So I thought I'll just bring a little bit of granularity in and share some of the micro practices for creating a reflective space within oneself.
Thank you, Neha. That was beautiful. Kirtana, I noticed you unmuted. Would you like to add something?
No, I think what I wanted to add, Maruk, is, all these practices, are great and can easily be incorporated in an organization. In fact, Wipro practices recognition very regularly, not just for your team members, but also for your peers, where you would have worked with individuals across different functions, different teams. And so I completely agree with Neha. Nothing works better than giving a pat on the back and saying, yes, I hear you, I understood what you were trying to do, and bring to the table. But all this goes back to the fact that you need to have a framework which works in the organization, a cultural framework, a kind of a compass, because people are changing, organizations, they are evolving constantly, right? So when a new person comes into the organization, how do they know what works here, what does not? They could be probably coming with some kind of a luggage from their previous organization. We don't know. And those kind of negative experiences can carry on if they don't know what works in this organization. And I feel that a culture that is spelt out clearly, really saying that, this is what we are, goes a very, very long way in giving that psychological safety, that is, it's okay, I can be my authentic self here. And of course, going back to what Anirudh said, right? How do you pulse your the employees through maybe engagement surveys? Are you giving them those opportunities, really talk about whether they have that psychological safety? Are they being able to bring their authentic selves to work, so on and so forth? But goes back to that entire framework. I feel that has to be written down, spoken widely, entrenched in all your processes. And it has to be repetitive. It can't be something that is said, maybe 5 years back and then forgotten. It has to be spoken again and again.
Thank you, Kirtana. Yes, Suchitra, please go ahead.
I just wanted to add 2 things that have worked for me and something that I now also give it to my coaches to practice. It is that the first thing that we do when we enter office is to open our emails, and that's it. That is the hijack that we are never able to get out of, right? And the tip that I remember, and I think it has worked well, even for me, even now I do that, is the reflective space created at that point in time. Look at what is the most active and energetic part of the day for you. It could be early morning for someone like me. It could be midday for someone, or it could be the evening, before you're winding up for the day. But that 15, 20 minutes is the reflective time to see, plan, what am I going to do for the rest of the day? What is still to be done? And how do we plan? So somewhere planning is not associated with reflection, but that's the myth that I feel, at least I have been able to unravel. So that's one. Number two is when we keep talking about mindfulness, I don't know whether, so during COVID, there were a lot of sessions on self-care, which I conducted for people who had volunteered, HR, as well as the medical support staff. So we talked about stealth mindfulness. And the interesting part about it is you don't know, these are typical day-to-day activities that you are doing, but they are just having a calming effect on you. For some people, it could be showering. Spending 10 more minutes in the shower, nobody would know, but that's your time of 10 minutes where you're thinking about what's going on, how am I feeling? It could be humming your favorite song and whatever it is and not. For some, it could be, cleaning up your cupboard, arranging your desk. Even I remember when I was sharing these as tips, one person said, putting things from the general inbox into folders is for me mindfulness. So this is labeled as stealth mindfulness. You're still being busy, but it is such an automatic process where you can go ahead and think without feeling, oh, I'm meditating, oh, I'm doing reflective work. But it creates that space where you're not pleasing someone, you're not running in a race. It's an autonomic system that is working, but gives you the time and the space where you feel it is mine. So I just wanted to add these to the list of micro skills that Neha mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think there are a couple of questions that have come up, so I think we'll go into the questions. We have covered some part of it. How do leaders from different geographies and cultures manifest the behaviors of reaction versus reflection? Would anybody have a perspective on that?
So I'm just jumping in, right?
Please.
See, and I can give you an example of Pfizer over here. We are a multinational, multicultural organization. Each one of us in the organization works with at least 7, 8 different nationalities at any given moment in time on a project or some work. I think something which has really worked is to acknowledge and know. Acknowledge who you are in front of the larger group and attempt to know. I'll go to, I don't know if I'm quoting the theory correctly, but many years ago I did learn Johari window. So this self-disclosure and feedback, if you're able to do that little looping over there very well, that tends to really help. Just asking, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Am I audible? Am I understandable? And cracking some jokes. How is the weather? So in all of our meetings, which is something really helped, is having that first 5 or 10 minutes to just become comfortable and not jump onto the issue. Now when individuals interact with each other or they are, as somebody who has never worked with a multicultural system is landing in a particular role, it just becomes easier for that person. They're able to glide in. And when I joined Pfizer 7, 8 years ago, that was one of the most seamless shifts that occurred for me. Day one I joined and I had to have some conversation with somebody who's in China. And they never had a conversation prior to that. This was the first time. It was just a seamless guiding in process. So that tends to help a lot. And it just removes the inhibitions that we tend to carry. And so that's a small point that I would want to make. So how those meetings, how those alignments, and that is the ingrained part of the culture. All meetings start with that. So that's one little example that I could share, which did make my life very comfortable. And therefore, even when I do some coaching for colleagues who are from different part of the world, it just becomes so seamless.
Suchitra, did you want to say something? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So there are different cultures, yeah. But like I said, culture is just one part of it. And there are so many aspects. Individuals within different cultures are different. Organizations, and I just like Anirudh mentioned, I worked for multinationals present in multiple countries, having traveled to different places. Even the way we speak and we show up versus how it is the others are will tell us a lot about how do we meet them at their space. Okay. So not having a long answer to it, I think it all boils down to understanding and defining boundaries. And asking the question to say, is it okay if I were to disturb you on a weekend or at 5 o'clock? Somebody says I'm on vacation in India, they would immediately say, but you can WhatsApp me, I'm fine with it. So this is a cultural nuance. We are always on, and we feel even our, out of office messages kind of define a lot about the culture that we are. So it could be a sign of a growing organization or a country which has a culture which would like to be receptive and always open to others. Whereas others have learned to draw their boundaries and say, no, I would like to claim my space. And this is the time I work. This is the time I'm not there. And so many a times as coaches, we are kind of coaching people to also draw up and define those boundaries for them. How do I say no? And I know we are like a majority women here. This is something that comes a lot more in coaching women. So how do you say no? It's okay. You need to fix your own breakfast. I'm not going to do that for you. So that is a tough thing. So it is culture, it is gender, it is personality. It is all of these rolled into one. And all of them do have a nuance about how things show up.
Thank you, Suchitra. Chitra?
I just wanted to bring in an interesting perspective, Maruk. While we have, of course, there are nuances. I completely agree with Suchitra. And I think as organizations become more and more diverse, you would see the way we work, the way we interact with each other also changes massively, right? But one interesting perspective that I have seen is that technology has a big role today to play, right? And they have these nudges where it allows us to be a little more reflective. For example, Microsoft Outlook would actually tell you if you are, packing up a person's schedule or your own schedule even, with meetings back to back, it would actually prompt you to say that, do you want to have like a 5-minute or a 10-minute gap in between? And those are things that we need to pick up. It's like tools are there, but if you don't pick them up and then don't use them, then that is what they are. They just remain as tools. But so while there are nuances when you work with with individuals from different countries, I think if you use technology really well and to the benefit that it really presents, I think we can do wonders.
Thanks.
So you're teaching technology reflective practice to the AI now.
So I don't want to get distracted by the technology, but I still feel that my question's really not been answered. I think you have all gone around my questions.
कोई काम कर, वो पाव को बाहर निकाल, काट के रख, बटर को साथ में रख, पैन को.
May I request everyone to go on mute, please? Just allow us another 10 minutes before your pav bhaji gets ready. Okay. I still feel my question was not answered. Are there some cultures that are inherently more reflective? Somebody had talked about, we are in a very competitive, in our country, we have less resources, we have more takers. There was a comment that said, we compete to get to where we are, and then suddenly now we're asked to be reflective and inclusive, etc., etc. So are there cultures that you have come across where you find are naturally more reflective because there is more space, there is more breathing space? And are there cultures that are more reactive? And it is, of course, it's a function of many, 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 many factors. We won't go into that. But fundamentally, from a geographical perspective, have you all experienced this? Do you have a perspective
One question. to
Yes.
answer your question.
Certainly.
The coach in me could pull back.
Go
So
ahead.
do you think reflection is, and culturally a culture which promotes a lot more reflection than the other
I
is
missed
better?
what you said. In between, I missed a word.
Okay, so I was saying that, do you think being more reflective is good versus being not so reflective and maybe be more action oriented? Is it an or is it that being more reflective could lead to overthinking and issues like that? It's just a question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Your question
It's
prompted that
it's like
thinking
what
for
we
me.
it's like what we started with. Is it really an either or? You know, we seem to have come full circle. It's not an either or, right? It is about, sometimes the example that comes to my mind is when I gain mastery, it's like unconscious competence, right? I'm not reflecting in that space. I'm driving because I've gained mastery, but I've took the time to reflect and slow down in order to gain that mastery. Right? And in that space, I could probably just do it without being as mindful maybe as I need to be in a space where I'm still growing and learning. But at a fundamental level, is there anything geographically, any thoughts? I mean, it's okay. We can move on to the next question. We are, I think now,
The
Sushima will
maximum
step
number
in.
of meditative centers are in India.
So is it a reflection of what we are or what we need is the question that's coming up in my mind.
Very
Nice.
simple,
There
yeah.
will be no market if there is no demand. That's a
Exactly.
good point.
The gap, the need, that's why it's there.
So I think then if anybody has any questions, I know we're over time.
There
And
is one point which
please.
came up, Maruk, which is by Prakash. He's asking, can you elaborate on what are the advantages to businesses with the reflective leadership and culture reflective?
Okay, who'd like to take that? We've touched upon it in bits and bobs, but maybe Anirudh, would you like to close with that?
I was just thinking, what would be the good words to give a response. So, very, very interesting inquiry, first of all, Prakash. And my submission to you, my response to this would be that, today, making decisions, quick decisions, and getting things going, having that what Suchitra said, in that doing, being so much in that doing space, tends to usually create a backlash. There is always going to be a wave once a large ship or a large aircraft goes, and sometimes smaller, you have to space before a smaller aircraft or a smaller ship can go into it. At the moment, you have to give that pause. You have to give that thing before something else can happen. So one of the biggest advantages which organizations are seeing is that it allows leaders to be more confident about the decisions that they're making. They are able to manage even if there is adversity of the decision far better. Right? It does not. The system does not crumble. Okay. The worst thing that you would want is that systems are crumbling, things are falling. The leaders are able to take hold onto that. They're able to hold on to that with a lot of poise, with lots of gravitas, with lots of confidence and surety. And so that's something which I have seen when leaders reflect, that really advantages the organization in terms of decisions that have been taken, the implementation of those decisions, and finding consequences.
Scorrende.
You had a point.
The pav bhaji is still in the making. So there is a great case study that for all those of us who would be interested in on how does it impact. Is there an example of an organization which has tried implementing something like, I wouldn't use the word only reflective leadership, but you would have seen Microsoft before Satya Nadella and Microsoft now under his leadership. Okay, there are numerous articles available on, I think there is also a YouTube video where he talks about empathy and how his special children taught him empathy, right? So that's a stellar example. So if you there was a case study which, I had done in one of the B school classes, where the earlier culture was you had to topple somebody else to get, market share or business. So the whole organizational structure was crisscross, where one had to outsmart the other, topple the other in order to grow. Whereas since the time he came over, the whole concept has been about growth mindset. It has been about empathetic leadership. It has been about caring for their team and coaching and whatnot and all that. The shareholder, the value that is being created is for all to see. And obviously, it is not just about attrition numbers or the amount of innovative practices that have come up in the organization. So it shows up on multiple aspects. So I just thought, this is something that is available in public domain, and I think we should really look at that as a case in point. There's an HBR article also, which talks about how Microsoft transformed using growth mindset.
That's a great resource, Suchitra. Thanks. I'm going to look that up myself. And I loved, of course, decision making, and I think just being more resilient. I think it just lends a lot more resilience to the leader, to the system, to be reflective, to be able to bounce back, to navigate the ambiguity, hold uncertainty, be a lighthouse to people around them, help people contain and be productive even in times of uncertainty and stress. So I would say the business benefits are numerous. Like, it just has a whole lot of impact on not just what is achieved, but also how it's achieved. So immensely useful to be in a space of reflective leadership in that sense.
Yeah, just one last point that I wanted to make, Maruk, and this is from what Anirudh also said. It is actually the outcome of reflective leadership, I think, is what is seen by the organization, right? And what I mean by saying that is, when you have decisions getting implemented, you would see that if there is a reflective leadership at play, those outcomes, the way implementations are happening, are constant learnings in themselves, in the way, you would have pilots where you have, maybe it's a large scale decision that is getting rolled out, and it could probably challenge the organization hugely. So there are small pilots done, for example, and that is really the way reflective leadership works, because they would want to see how, what would be the outcomes of those pilots. Can we learn something from those pilots, and can we make changes to the decision that is being taken? And that is something that I've seen help the business immensely. And that really is, that's why I said it's an outcome of reflective leadership.
Thank you so much. I know we are over time, or practically literally a minute away. I just want to, if I have your permission from the panel, could we close? Would this be a good time to close? I just want to close with a very nice quote that I found by the founder of the Institute of Mindful Leadership. And she says, our journey to develop the qualities of mindful leadership calls us to be present in this moment, to be still in the midst of activity, in the midst of chaos that often typifies our lives. As we begin to cultivate a practice to develop the qualities of mindful leadership, we begin to recognize the folly of believing that if only we could move just faster, we would eventually catch up. So thank you very, very much. Thank you for your authenticity. Thank you for your sharing. Thank you for this beautiful discussion that we've had this evening. Sushima, over to you.
Thank you so much, Maruk, Neha, Anirudh, Suchitra, Kirtana. Thanks very much, Nilima, Nandini, for holding the space for all of us. A huge thank you to everyone who logged in and stayed for the entire session and, peppered the chat box with your questions and comments. I think it brought the panel discussion even more to life. Nilima, anything you want to?
Yeah, I want to take a pic before people kind of head off. That is more important.
So
So
cameras
can
on.
yeah, can we have all the cameras on so that
let us see your wonderful faces?
yeah.
Please smile.
1 second. Great. Thank you so much.